Star Wars defies the laws of the economic cycle, and a pint-sized Darth Vader shines at the Super Bowl. It's Thursday, February 10th, and you'll hear about those stories and more this week in Star Wars. This Week in Star Wars is your source for new and noteworthy developments from the galaxy far, far away. I'm your host, Matt Fox. And now, this week's lead stories. Lucasfilm announced through a press release this week that the Star Wars toy franchise generated over $500 million in revenue during 2010.
Great cash, homie.
This represents a record amount of revenue for the franchise during a non-movie year and is its best performance since 2005, which saw the release of Revenge of the Sith. Despite the lack of big theatrical support, analysts were quick to point out that Star Wars does have a weekly presence in the homes of much of the toy-buying public through the Clone Wars animated series. Perhaps most impressive, this performance makes Star Wars the best-selling boys' toy license for the third consecutive year. The press release is quick to point out that there is no reason to suspect that this performance will slow down in the near term, as Clone Wars continues to air to strong ratings on the Cartoon Network each week, and 2012 will mark the return of the Star Wars franchise to theaters, as Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is re-released in 3D. Details and excerpts from the press release are available on HollywoodReporter.com. As you are almost undoubtedly aware by now, Volkswagen aired a Star Wars-themed commercial during past Sunday's Super Bowl, featuring a young Darth Vader apparently using the Force to start a Volkswagen Passat after failing to use the Force on a number of household objects. While the version that was broadcast during the Super Bowl was a truncated 30-second version of the commercial, the full edition was available on YouTube and other websites for several days before the big game. The commercial fared very well in surveys and analysis of the Super Bowl commercial onslaught, finishing usually near the top or at the top of surveys as to which commercials were either popular or effective. Apparently subscribing to the mantra of striking while the iron is hot, Volkswagen has made available on YouTube a series of outtakes from the commercial, while the young star in the Vader mask was given the media circus tour earlier in the week and was even able to meet James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader from the theatrical films. Several bits of collecting news this week, as the industry ramps up for the annual Toy Fair convention, which takes place in New York City this weekend. While the traditional pre-Toy Fair rumor mill was unusually quiet this year, there was one reveal of note in the past week, that being a Hasbro Republic Attack Shuttle combination vehicle and playset. The item was shown and described in a number of European toy industry magazines, and those leaks can be seen on Cybertron.com. While nothing is official until announced by Hasbro this weekend, reasonable online speculation seems to indicate that this will be Hasbro's now traditional big toy released sometime late in the summer. Be sure to keep an eye out on your podcast feed for Toy Fair analysis next week from This Week in Star Wars, as well as our Twitter feed for breaking Toy Fair news. Sideshow put up for pre-order this week the Emperor Palpatine premium format figure for $499. An exclusive version is available with an alternate Emperor's face, and the figure itself comes seated in a large throne environment. News about upcoming figures in the Hasbro 3 3/4 line was learned this week via Entertainment Earth when they posted the availability of 2 new cases of figures for pre-order. First, from the Saga Legends collection, a new wave is coming which contains 8 new reissued figures in the Saga Legends line. These include an Episode 3 Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Stormtrooper, Death Star Trooper, Super Battle Droid, Mace Windu, Boba Fett, the Destroyer, and the Space Trooper, which is a reissue of the Space Trooper figure from the Toys R Us/online exclusive Final Wave from the Build-A-Droid collection. The second bit of news was the highly anticipated information about the availability of the Wedge Antilles figure from the Vintage collection. Long demanded and long denied on an individual card, the Corellian pilot is no doubt the most star-crossed figure in the Star Wars line. This tradition of disrespect seems to be continuing, as Wedge will appear in a revision of Wave 3, that's the Return of the Jedi wave, of the Vintage Collection later this year. Appearing at the rate of one per case, in a revision of a wave that will have been gone from retail for several months at that point, has led to some speculation as to just how easy this figure will be to acquire, although it is entirely possible that he will be included in subsequent waves. StarWarsShop.com has put up for order their exclusive Gentle Giant mini bust of the airborne trooper from Mace Windu's squad. He's limited to 1,250 pieces and is a repaint of the previously available Star Wars Shop exclusive airborne trooper with Utapau markings. As I said, the bust is currently available and comes in at just under $55. From the links I never thought I'd plug file, Oprah.com is looking for Princess Leia collectors. The former Queen of Daytime Talk and now Queen of her own network has put out the call for both collectors and fans of Darth Vader's daughter. Oprah.com, where all details are available, is asking for those that are interested to upload their narrative stories as well as pictures of their collection for an undisclosed project. Participate at your own risk. In other news, George Lucas reportedly visited Disney World this week to ride the new Star Tours experience. This coincided with an official announcement from Lucasfilm that Star Wars Weekends, the now annual celebration of the Star Wars franchise, held at and in conjunction with Disney World, will take place this year on each weekend between May 20th and June 12th. Anthony Daniels, C-3PO, will appear on the first two weekends, while Disney veteran and Clone Wars star Ashley Eckstein will appear throughout the celebration. Details are available on both StarWars.com as well as on the Disney website. Despite their name, the Annie Awards are not an awards ceremony for red-haired 1930s orphan girls or for diminutive future Sith Lords. They are, in fact, the industry awards for animated films and TV shows, and they were given out this past week. While Star Wars The Clone Wars was nominated in a number of categories, including Best Animated Television Production, a Best Writing nomination for the Heroes on Both Sides episode, and voice acting nominations for Nika Futterman's Asajj Ventress and Corey Burton's Baron Papanoida, the series failed to bring home any actual winners. However, Star Wars was not completely shut out during the evening. Robot Chicken, Star Wars Episode 3, won the Best Writing category, prevailing over four outstanding competitors, including the aforementioned Heroes on Both Sides episode, as well as The Simpsons, Phineas and Ferb, and Futurama. As the kids say, good on them. Lastly this week, I know that we have at least a couple listeners in my home state of Michigan, and they are encouraged to go see the one-man Star Wars trilogy, of which there will be 5 performances over 3 days, February 24th through 26th, at the Andiamo Novi Theater in Novi, Michigan. Tickets are available on Ticketmaster.com, and if you've never seen the one-man Star Wars trilogy, you owe it to yourself to see it, whether you like the films or not. And if you happen to live or work in Novi, Amy, you have no excuse. So, like I said, Toy Fair starts this weekend, and since we've seen next to nothing of what might be premiered at the event, maybe we should expect next to nothing to be premiered at the event. Obviously, we know that Clone Wars figures are going to continue ad infinitum as long as the show is on TV, and probably after that. We know that the Vintage Collection is going to continue for at least another year, so there won't be that big announcement. The community could never really agree on what the next big vehicle should be, so we can't really be surprised when it turns out to be an attack shuttle from the Clone Wars. Many people, like me, suspect we'll see a repainted Slave One with Empire Strikes Back coloring, but aside from that, what can there really be? Last year we got the announcement of the Vintage Collection, we got the announcement of the big AT-AT, we got the announcement of the rocket-firing Boba Fett figure, so really anything this year would seem like a letdown after all those big announcements we had last year. But when you take that in conjunction with the news that this property made people $500 million last year, I don't think they're going to mind a quiet year. And that was This Week in Star Wars. Join us again next week for more news, notes, and developments from the galaxy far, far away. Visit www.thisweekinstarwars.com or www.twisw.com for links to old episodes, news about the show, as well as links to some of the stories we discussed in today's program. You can follow us on our breaking news Twitter feed, TWISWcast, and we welcome comments on our Facebook page. We also welcome news suggestions, questions, and comments via email at host@thisweekinstarwars.com. Help us grow the community. If you enjoyed This Week in Star Wars, please go to iTunes and leave a positive review of the podcast. You've been listening to This Week in Star Wars. We troll the web so you don't have to.
This Week in Star Wars is not affiliated with Lucasfilm, its subsidiaries, or any other entity mentioned in this podcast. Star Wars, its characters, and creations are the property of Lucasfilm. All other trademarks are property of their respective trademark owners. This Week in Star Wars is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast is copyright 2010 This Week in Star Wars. Invaluable technical assistance provided by WebStorm Interactive. News, comments, and questions can be directed to host@thisweekinstarwars.com. More information, links to stories presented, past episodes, and additional contact information are available at www.thisweekinstarwars.com.
Great cast, homie.